Hey guys, it's Adam from Lucipixel and welcome back. Now I'm going to kind of freestyle it today because what I'm going to share with you today is something I'm rediscovering in my life again. And the reason I'm saying I'm rediscovering it is because I make this discovery every so many years. I kind of pull myself into this really, really awesome headspace and things really take off for me, but then for one reason or another, I get caught up in other facets of my life and my lifestyle changes in a way that makes me forget about the value of this really important lesson. And when I think about other artists that I know, very inspired, very inspiring artists that create work that kind of pulls you into a different world, I notice that these artists have this quality. It's something that you see in what they do. And it's not only exclusive to illustration and fantasy art and stuff like that, or fine arts for that matter. This pertains to every single art form. And it's exciting because I'm experiencing this again in my life right now, and I'm doing so many amazing things with it. It's really invigorated me and unlocked a part of my creativity. And what I'm talking about is extending your artwork beyond your painting, stepping outside of your bubble and expanding your art beyond the artistic creation, making it a part of your life. And what I mean by this, just to give you an example of where this kind of resonated with me, and what unlocked it was something you wouldn't expect. Sometimes inspiration, sometimes keys are unlocked in ways that are very obscure and unexpected. But when I first moved, I moved about a year and a half ago. I originally lived on the island of Montreal, but then I moved outside of the island and to the outskirts, and I set up a new studio. And when I set up the studio originally, it was a bit of a rush job because I had the kids home all the time and I was working full time and I didn't really have enough time to get things done. So when summer vacation kicked in and my family went out on a trip and I had the house to myself for a couple of weeks, I blitzed my way through redesigning my studio space for video and for teaching and for all that kind of stuff. And I was in and out of the store and I was painting and putting up furniture and assembling furniture, and it was a really big, exhausting job. I destroyed my body doing it. But in the end, I ended up with a template for my studio space, a framework for it. I had the frames on the walls with art. I had lights, frame painting lights that I had installed on the walls as well. I had my standing desk and I had my gaming desk set up and a few little knickknacks, some shelves and stuff like that, so I could organize my equipment around the studio. And that's when I did my studio reveal video about a week after that, which I'll link in the video right now. You can click that little link. Since then, since that day, since the reveal of my studio back then, my studio has gone through many, many changes, but most of it was functional. So I added shelving for more books because my book collection grew very quickly. And I got a couple of little plants and stuff like that, little decorative plants and shelves and productivity furniture, things like that. A couple of extra, I got some LED lights to light up the studio. But it was very clinical to a certain degree. And as much as I love the studio and I love the videos I've been producing and I love this space for producing videos and for teaching, it wasn't until very, very recently, I'd say within the last 2.5, 3 weeks, that I had an epiphany. I made a realization that about my space, about the world around me, that is very exciting. I looked at the walls and I realized that there was a lot of white and wood. It was very themed and very neutral and very controlled. I looked at the, how I had set up my TV and my cable management and the lighting. Everything was very stylized and very clean, but it completely lacked soul. It lacked spirit. And it's ironic because one of the very big things that I teach as an art teacher, one of the subjects I love teaching is, the fundamentals of set design. I'm not a professional set designer, but I love the fundamentals of set design, particularly when it comes to all different facets of artistic creation, be it characters, environments, whatever the case might be. The principles of set design are a little bit of a hidden passion, but I've got a lot of these little hidden passions tucked away that kind of feed into my art, just like you, I imagine. During that class, one of the things I touch on is the element of variety and the element of unpredictability and pattern and all of these different things. And in saying this, in teaching this, and most importantly, in painting this, it's ironic how I didn't translate that principle into my personal workspace. That my personal workspace was clinical and professional, but my art was organic and rich and detailed. And that's when I realized I needed to make a change. I realized that I needed to break the symmetry. I needed to break the cleanliness, the rigidity of it, which it was influenced by many YouTubers and set designers that I love. I absolutely adore, and I still watch them, and I still love what they do to this day. But my personal space was not an extension of my artistic self, of my creative self. So I decided to remedy that. And I started buying these old vintage frames, and I got more plants, and then I got different types of frames with golds and patinas and aged fabrics, and I got leather, old genuine leather and wood things that brought up this kind of age and vintage feel to it, and this organic quality to the environment itself. And slowly but surely, my environment started to become an expansion of my artistic self. It became an expansion of my paintings, in a sense. And I can't stress enough how exciting this experience has been, because I took for granted how important it is for artistic growth, not just to have pretty paintings, but to live it, to experience your art in real life. A couple of very good examples of artists that do this is John Howe, one of my personal favorite artists, or Brian Froud, or Peter Jackson, or all of these artists that live and breathe their art, that have studios that look like medieval caverns or old dusty galleries, or another really good example is as an artist I know personally, Martina Fakova, from Slovakia, who, if you look at her makeup, if you look at her clothing, if you look at her room, if you look at her, just the space that she lives in and the way she creates is she's her physical self and her physical environment is a painting. My mother is a very good example of this. Her home is a canvas. The colors, the textures, the materials, the brass, the golds, the old frames, the leathers, her home is a painting. And it's a fascinating, rich painting. And what's so awesome about this, what's so amazing about this is that in nerding out over your personal space, in designing your space as a reflection of your artistic self, you're also feeding your art. It feeds back into your paintings. It fuels a theme, an aesthetic, a philosophy into your art that you can take for granted when you get caught up in the technicality. And it's a very important facet of taking your technical self and bleeding that technical self into creative expression. I very often explain to my students, and something I might have touched on in my videos in the past, is that we go through phases in growth artistically. We go through creative phases and we go through technical phases, where sometimes our technical self feels a bit lacking And it's holding us back from being able to execute a vision. So we focus on our technical, and in the process of doing that, we might put our creative self on the back burner a little bit because it's not a priority at the time. We're just trying to build our fundamental skills and stuff like that, and learn new techniques that we haven't yet grown comfortable with. But then at a certain point, your technical skill starts to get boring. It starts to feel dry. It's not exciting anymore because you've kind of already gotten the gist of it. You've gotten the rhythm going, and you feel like you need a little bit something more. So then the tide slowly shifts towards the creative at that point. And that's, again, another very invigorating moment in your artistic journey, because you've built your technical skills to a certain level, and now you get a chance to show it off somewhere. You get a chance to loosen yourself up on some creative expression. And through that process, you can allow your technicality to kind of sit in the back burner, and you bring your creative self to the forefront. And throughout your career, you slowly flip-flop back and forth through that process. And you'll notice that as you advance further and further in your career, that shift, the tide that ebbs back and forth between creative and technical, flows, or at least shifts less dramatically, and it slowly starts to teeter-totter towards a center point where it starts to even out, and both your technical and artistic grow in tandem at the same time to a certain degree. There's still always a shift back and forth, but you've developed both of these facets of your creation to a point, to a degree that you don't have to hyper focus on one or the other. You can kind of build them both back and forth at the same time. It comes with time, it comes with experience, and it comes with practice in that sense. It comes naturally on its own. So don't go chasing after that goal. It's something that will happen very much on its own. But sometimes you lose sight of the fact that a change needs to happen. And that's what I feel happened in my art recently, because with the move and with the new studio and the new space and building my school and learning new audio and video stuff and, motion control, like camera control systems and lighting effects and editing techniques and stuff like that, once my studio was built, I let it go, and I kind of said, okay, we're set for now. I can add little knickknacks here and there, but we're good to go for now. And it was a technical growth. It was technical growth, not only with my drawing, but equally with audio and video equipment and lighting and stuff like that. And it was funny because it was a ring. If I can sound very Tolkien-esque there for a moment, it was a ring that unlocked me. A ring, like a ring you wear on your finger, okay? And no, I'm not talking about the one ring to rule them all. I'm talking about a ring that I found out about this ring studio, Silver Crafters, based in Canada, in Toronto, Canada. And I went to check it out because I looked at the work, I looked at the craftsmanship, and I was sitting there going, holy smokes. And you might not know this, but I've been somebody that has always loved men's jewelry. I've always loved masculine craftsmanship. I've loved beautiful craftsmanship, and I've been somebody who very often grew up wearing bracelets and necklaces and rings and earrings and all kinds of stuff. I've always been a big fan of that kind of craftsmanship, but I kind of put it aside. I got into different things and stuff. I didn't think much of it. But when I saw these rings, I got turned on. I went, oh God, that's beautiful. And I went and I checked out the store, and before you knew it, I owned one, and then I owned two, and then I owned three. And I started to build this collection of jewelry again. And seeing it on my hands kind of unlocked a part of my brain. And I realized, I asked myself, what is it about these rings that is just important to me? There's some artistic, personal, spiritual importance to wearing this, to seeing my hands and seeing these textures and these designs on my hands, crafted by masterful people who take their craft seriously. Not just the dinky crap you can buy online. I'm talking about the real craftsmanship. I felt there was something in this experience that it was trying to unlock something in me. And I realized it was this. It was my creative self. It was that it was time for me to once again but with much more conviction than I have in the past. Bring my art into my life. I was raised by somebody who did this. I'm surrounded, I live with a family who are like this. I'm surrounded by artists who do this. And I thought, I need to do this in my life. And it's exciting. And how it's injecting itself into how I design my workspace and how the kinds of books that I draw in and the pens or pencils that I draw with. It's making art an ever-present part of every single facet of my life. The music I listen to and the influences, the things that I expose myself to that keep this energy going. It hasn't only made my living space, which is something that thankfully the coronavirus has not stolen away from us. If we can do anything, we can definitely enhance our home environment. It is making me better at art. It's making me more excited about it. It's teaching me that art is not just an image on a plane, on a canvas. It's an extension of your soul. And your environment should be an extension of your soul if you really want to experience your true full self. And you can't experience the side of your artistry if you don't live it too. And like I mentioned at the beginning, this is something that translates into every different facet of art. How being a salsa dancer, when I was into salsa dancer or swing and jive, being a part of the whole rockabilly scene and being a passionate jiver and being a part of that ecosystem and being a part of the whole swing scene and everything like that, and the fashion and the lifestyle and the music and the people you hang out with. And I loved being a part of that. I loved how dance very naturally brought me into a different world, and it's still very much a part of who I am. If you wonder why I love painting things that have to do with folklore from around the world, it's because I love planet Earth. I love the diversity and I love the richness of different cultures. It's incredibly ironic that somebody like me has not traveled more. I've never been overseas. I've traveled across Canada quite a bit, but I've only been to the United States a couple of times. I've been very much a homebody most of my life, even though I'm 45 years old. But I was a born traveler. I was always so caught up in my own little home world that I never really left my nest that much. But I do in my art, and I do in my dance. This is ways for me that I can extend myself into other people's cultures and other people's worlds and experience a perspective of life that I never could otherwise. And that it creates a sense of importance in things that most people would take for granted because they don't live in the shoes of other people. And this is what designing your workspace does. It creates a culture around you. This is what expanding your art into your home, into your fashion, into your hairstyles, into your makeup, into your body art, if you're into that kind of stuff, into your jewelry, into your vocabulary, into your outside passions like LARPing or, live action role playing or, or buying suits of armor or going out and buying swords or getting into the whole Victorian Gothic scene because it feeds into your desire to do Bloodborne style art, or buying certain types of jewelry because it reflects a certain part of your personality. It's a spiral that fuels back into who you are as an artist, and it expands your art into directions you never would have imagined. That experience of putting that ring on my hand and the bracelets or whatever it is that I did was a key, and it unlocked so many other things. And it exposed me to principles and priorities and materials and textures and forms that have been at the forefront of the art that you see me doing, especially the last few pieces that I've done. A lot of you have commented on this change that I've made in a very positive way, and you can thank that to the fact that these paintings are not just a reflection of my artistic skill. They're a reflection of my artistic lifestyle. And it's just a reminder that as years go on, I'm turning more and more into my mother, it appears. How ironic is that? Because it's definitely a world that she has given me permission to be comfortable with. that her influence definitely gave me permission to geek out, to nerd out, to be a little bit eccentric, to step outside of the norm and turn your body into a work of art, turn your lifestyle into a work of art. And I can't stress enough to do this yourself. Now here's the nice thing about that. You don't have to be rich to experience this. Not always. Sometimes you need a little bit more money for certain things, but one of the one of the places I love for this type of exploration is in thrift shops. I love thrift shops. And for the longest time over the last few years, I've been shopping in retail stores, standard retail stores, where I'm buying whatever was available. And now I'm back to shopping in thrift shops where I can buy an entire wardrobe for $15. And I can get cool jewelry and picture frames and all these kinds of cool knickknacks. And one of my recommendations in doing this is to think about the kind of art that you love and think to yourself, how can I turn my room? How can I turn my studio? How can I turn my office into that? How can I turn my room into Old Yarnum? How can I turn my studio into Hyrule? Think about it that way. Okay? And then go to a thrift shop with this very, very specific, very precise aesthetic. You have to walk into a thrift shop with a very, very deep, focused aesthetic. You need to know what you're looking for. It doesn't have to be anything specific. It can be a shirt, it can be a lighter, it can be a lamp, it can be a picture frame, it can be a plant, it doesn't matter. But you have to walk in with this aesthetic, with these colors in your mind, with these textures in your mind, and you walk in and you look for that. You look for anything that stimulates that feeling in your brain that you're looking for visually, and seek it out everywhere. You might find somebody maybe discards an old, my old place that I used to live in. One of the things I did once, I was driving down the street and I stopped because somebody had dumped some old dark wood French doors. French doors are doors that have like windows in it, right? These old beautiful French doors just sitting there on the side of the curb. Basically, you like, take me if you want. And thankfully it hadn't rained. And I looked at the door and I was looking at the build of it. I was making sure there was no termites or anything like that in it. And I went, that's a perfectly good door with beautiful brass hinges and everything like that. And I was like, well, screw this. And I grabbed it and I threw it in my truck and I drove home with it. And I installed it in my kitchen and I had this beautiful door in my kitchen. You can do it for little to no money. That's the nice thing about it, because visual exploration, usually for an artist, is outside of the commercial norms. Sometimes it is. If you're somebody who's into like stylized futuristic stuff and Nike seems to be the brand that really illustrates your aesthetic, then by all means go for it. You'll be paying for it, but you know, that might be the direction that you like want to take your stuff. But from an artistic perspective, it's very specific. And it's usually less it's not a popular vision. Not everybody's chasing after that same trend. So you can find stuff in places where other people would discard it. Thrift shops, perfectly good example. Some of my favorite clothes. Here's a good example. Although it has nothing to do with this aesthetic I'm talking about. My video that I did for my Overwatch book review. Here, I'll link it up there so you can check it out. I was wearing an old sweater. I bought that sweater 15 years ago. A lot of people thought it was a coat, but it's actually a sweater. And nobody ever comments on my clothes. Every freaking third comment was, I love your sweater. I love your sweater. I think it was the first comment. Everybody was jiving on my sweater. And if you only knew, I got that sweater for $2 15 years ago at the Salvation Army. And if you look at the logo, there's a little red logo. I don't know if you can read it in the video because I'm not looking, but it has RDS written on it, which means it's from Quebec. RDS, or RDS in French, stands for Réseau des Sports, which means the sport network. And that's what RDS means in French, but nobody gives a crap, right? Only people from Quebec would have a laugh over that. But I'm literally wearing a sweater that had RDS on it, but I loved the cut of it and I loved the color that I bought it. And I was like, oh, well, whatever. I'm not a jock, but I still thought it was a cool looking sweater and everybody loved it. $2. Okay? Money well spent. I've been enjoying that $2 for the last 15 years plus. I bought wardrobes of clothes every single week, and I never spent more than $15. I had wardrobes full of these old 1970s shirts with these patterns and colors that were very specific to my aesthetic, with these cuts that were very specific to my aesthetic. I got a lot of compliments for those shirts, and everybody was like, where did you buy it? Salvation Army, $2. You just need to know what to look for. You know what? You need to know what color and cut you're looking for. So I'm sending all of you lovely, talented, creative, passionate, hyper-focused artists out on a mission to start thinking. Look around at your space around you and ask yourself the question, is this some generic white room with no soul in it? And if it is, what can I do to build on it? And if you're already the type of person who customizes her space, or you're somebody who already understands the value and the joy of extending your artistic aesthetic into your personal life, then I'm already preaching to the converted. So you've probably been nodding your head in agreement the whole time I've been talking. So I don't need to tell you anything. In fact, you'll probably be the one tutoring me moving forward. And with that said, I love you all with all my heart, as always, and happy painting. Take care.